Hello, and welcome to the very first video podcast here at the University of Wedding Filmmakers. My name's Christian Nachtrieb, and our guest this afternoon is none other than the Dave Williams, founder of CinemaCake Filmmakers based out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Dave is a recent inductee into the WEVA Hall of Fame, winner of multiple Creative Excellence Awards, and has been named one of Event DV's top 25 videographers on multiple occasions. CinemaCake has been producing top-of-the-line wedding films for 15 years with no sign of slowing down. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Christian.
It's a real treat to have you. I've been a fan for quite a while, ever since the beginning of my company. I remember one of the first things I noticed about your website was the logo and the name. I just immediately thought, like, this dude's got it together. So always been jealous, always been a big fan. One of the biggest things I think that stands out about your company is just the undying love that your clients verbally express to you in multiple media formats. And so I've been always, a big fan of that, and that's a great thing. One of the reasons we asked you to come on the show, actually the main reason, was because of your undeniable leadership and team management skills. CinemaCake is comprised of how many staff members?
Well, including our employees and our subcontractors, I think we're at 14 now.
Okay. So I know the goal for many, aspiring wedding cinematographers and filmmakers is growth. Growth not just in terms of like revenue and numbers and caliber of clients and type of weddings, but also their team. And the team can really make or break a business, and it's super important to just surround yourself with talented, smart, and passionate individuals. And so that's a super important aspect of people looking to grow in this industry. So I was hoping we could get a little background on CinemaCake, kind of talk a little bit about your early days starting out.
Sure. 2001, I was in pharmaceutical sales, and one of the reps I was working with knew I was kind of a video geek. I had always been involved in the projects that involved putting up a PowerPoint or just doing a quick video, training videos, things like that. So she asked me if I would shoot her wedding. And of course I said yes, but I'd never, except for family members, shot a wedding before. So I then spent the next 2 weeks and $7,500 to get ready for my first, what turned out to be an $800 wedding package. And that's where it all started.
Same with me, actually. Same numbers, same scenario. A friend of a friend asked us to shoot their wedding for that exact figure. So maybe that's the going rate for just starting out. So after that first wedding, was there anything particular about it that kind of drew you to live event? What was the stickiness, for you?
I guess what sold me going forward was not too long after that wedding. And back then, 2001, really all I had to show was a VHS tape. So I think it's so ridiculous when I think about it now.
Yeah.
That I'm going around with a briefcase and a VHS tape inside, almost door to door. Hold on, my chefs are a little distracted.
I'm sorry.
I'm in an interview here. Oh. Get back to work.
There you go, team management 101. So you're saying about the VHS tapes.
So I had this one VHS tape, right? And shortly after that, I had shot a bat mitzvah. So I figured, wow, I've got the whole spectrum, right?
Yeah.
So I would dress up in a suit, in a briefcase. I would take 2 VHS tapes and hope that my prospect had a VHS player. And then just visit prospects. It's funny when I think now about in the beginning where I thought I should have advertised. I mean, I even made up flyers, and I went around Philadelphia dropping flyers off at different churches.
Sure, yeah.
I figured everybody gets married in a church mostly, and maybe that's the place to get referrals. Well,
yeah.
It's kind of silly when you think about it now, but that's how it all started. But what really sucked me in was when I joined our local association, the Greater Philadelphia Videographers Association. My buddy Tim Sudall got me involved in that back early on. And when I went and they had a show your work kind of event, and I showed the video and I ended up winning a local contest with it, and I was just convinced then at the age of 38 that this is what I wanted to do.
It's awesome that it was the work and, like, that part of it as opposed to the money part of it that kind of drew you in. And I think that's where success comes from, is the passion to do good work and to make people happy, and not so much get into something for the money that will follow, if that's truly what it is that you're after.
Yet you still have to explain to your better half that this
Yeah. Right.
this hobby will eventually become a money making
It's gonna go somewhere, trust me.
business. So yeah, that's where it started. And the passion, you're right, was first, and then we figured out the money later. But I stayed with pharmaceutical sales for the next 2 years as I built my book.
Sure.
So, I was just going crazy trying to do all the shoot. It's just my buddy and Steve that we started in the beginning. He didn't edit. So the two of us would shoot. I was doing all the editing. And by the second year of doing that on the side, I was not only just overwhelmed with trying to keep both things balanced, but
Sure.
it wasn't until then that I realized, and I went to Cheryl, my wife, and I said, look, this is something that could really work. And if I had more time and this pesky full-time job wasn't in the way, I could actually sell more and build this into something. She had the courage and the confidence to let me do what I wanted to do. And now she's more than half the business.
Oh, nice. There you go.
She runs the whole thing. She keeps everybody happy from behind the scenes, and then I'm one of the guys out in front. So,
Excellent.
And as you can see now, it's a team now, and we've, I think, always approached it. It really changed when we rebranded to CinemaCake, but we've always approached it as a team. I never wanted it to be Dave Williams Films, right?
Sure.
Because then, if it's not me there, then
Questions arise, and they wonder, why is this, that? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we've always presented it as a team, both on shooting and on editing. And then, soon after those first couple of years, it was our third year, I think, we started hiring.
Gotcha.
Because it wasn't until then that I realized that there are actually people out there who do everything better than I do.
Yeah, it's ditto.
It's just a matter of finding them and then managing them.
True. The hardest part, I think, for us, and the pivotal point is when you do get to that point when you're growing, that you do realize that you can't handle everything just all under, yourself, and, you have to kind of let go of being a control freak, which is, I think, my problem, is wanting to have hands in everything, and you just kind of got to learn to relinquish that. And so the hardest part is finding someone that you can trust, and then how do you actually find them? So could you talk a little bit about, like, maybe avenues that didn't work out so well for you? Because I know and you can look on Craigslist, Mandy, Facebook forums. There's any number of resources for you to find someone. What worked for you and what didn't work for you in terms of that search?
Well, before I answer that, I guess the important thing is, because I know a lot of people get a little overwhelmed when they're a one-man band.
Sure.
Keeping up with post-production, and I'm on the forums all the time. So I hear people out there struggling, having 6-month, 8-month, 1-year turnaround.
Yeah.
And it's a dangerous place to be. It's a very scary place to be. It's where I was before I started hiring. I was up to 40 jobs in a backlog that I was convinced by that time I would never dig myself out of that hole.
Yeah, it eats you.
Yeah, and I was convinced I was just going to go out of business before it even really got started. So then the question is, how do you find people? What didn't work? I don't know. It's hard to remember what didn't work, because I try to forget the bad stuff.
Let it slide.
But what really started working was, in the beginning, I didn't really know anybody. So I reached out to people in mostly the corporate video community. Mm-hmm. And sound guys, lighting guys, because I didn't want everything to rely on just me and Steve, and especially if I'm going to have more than one team out there, how do you approach that? So I went after who I thought were the most talented people on the corporate side. Like, I started years ago using audio guys because I've always felt that the audio is the most important part of a film.
Ditto.
And if you screw that up, it doesn't matter what you shoot.
Right.
I tell prospective clients to really pay attention to audio, and I think everybody does. They know what's good and what's not. They don't always know why.
They especially know it's not good when they see it. Maybe not necessarily when they're watching like a good one, because a good, audio track, you're not going to notice.
That's right. That's exactly what I say. Imagine if you were watching a television show and, the picture was a little fuzzy, right? Reception's not that great, but the sound was good. You could follow the story. You might watch it. But the second you put on a show where there's static, there's something wrong with the audio. It doesn't matter how great the picture is. It's almost unwatchable.
Yeah.
So knowing that, I just wanted the best audio. So I hired pro audio guys that had their, they carry their whole mixing board on them and lav mics and everything. These guys worked for Tamer Tufik, was who I started with back then. But they worked for NFL Films. So these guys, their stuff. And I knew that I could just focus on the visual.
Sure.
Not worry about the audio, because that has to be the most stressful part of shooting a live event, is getting the audio right.
Yeah.
So that
Interesting.
started, and then as technology evolved and we were able to put smaller recorders on people and be confident with offline recorders and not monitoring and adjusting levels every second.
Yeah.
Then we had the confidence to build our own audio kits, and everybody was trained, and things changed a little bit. Audio is still very stressful, but I think with what we have now, the technology we have now, and once people know how to use it, it's the best thing we have going. It's the best way to tell a story.
Exactly. Would you say, in general, it's smart to kind of, because for me personally, my weakness is editing, not my ability, but more so like the stress and the straining of having to keep focus for so long. So I have a huge admiration for editors who can look through footage when they were not there and able to like weave together something from that. So we found it super valuable to invest in a really solid editor, which we have now. Do you kind of agree that you should try to invest in people that kind of pick up on your weaknesses?
Well, I haven't edited in years.
Okay.
I learned long ago that there are many editors who can edit better and faster than I can. I know what I want. I know what looks good. And just learning how to work with those editors and making sure everybody's on the same page was, I think, the biggest challenge in the beginning. And now it's kind of a well-oiled machine. We have so much on our gallery that anybody who works for us, or as you know, we've done the editing contest. That's how we find our greatest editors over the years.
Yeah.
But you can go into our gallery and spend days just watching finished films and get a really good idea of what we're looking for, not only in shooting and lighting and sound, but in the edit. And I think that's been our greatest asset, is kind of building this DNA, right? Where you should be able to look at it. I should be able to look at a film and go, oh, that's one of ours, right?
Yeah.
So that takes a while, but I think once it's built and everybody, it just makes it easier to train everybody else, and they learn to emulate what we're going for. I'm not saying that we get stagnant, things don't change and evolve, because of course they do.
Sure, yeah.
But it's great to have that just in the can already.
Yeah.
It makes moving forward a lot easier. So I don't know if you asked about hiring talent, hiring editors. So do you want me to talk a little bit about our contests?
Sure, yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. I don't know of anyone else actually that does that other than you. What I've told people, and we used to do this a little bit, is to give someone a wedding that's already been edited. Don't let them see that version first, and kind of give that to them as almost like a trial run. But we've never held a contest where multiple people kind of compete. It sounds almost like, the Social Network, Mark Zuckerberg having those coders kind of have like a hackathon to figure out who's coming with them to California.
Exactly. Yeah. So the first one we did back in 2004. The idea was, and back then we were shooting on mini DV tapes, and the idea was to take a wedding, get enough footage that's representative of the day from multiple cameras, package it together, and then see if there are editors out there, whether they're film students or it didn't matter.
Yeah.
If somebody's creative and they can edit let's see who's out there. So the idea was to hand that package to as many people who wanted it, and let them cut something, and let's take a look at the results.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one was really successful. As a matter of fact, my first, he was our second editor, but Gary was the one who won the first contest in 2004.
Okay.
And he ended up being with us for years as a subcontracted editor. And then since then, we've had many subcontracted editors and many employees who have gone through now 6 contests, and we've picked up editors along the way. So the idea of the contest is to send out raw footage. Anybody who wants it, they can have it. Take a look at that edit. I think back then we said 3 minutes. You know, make a 3-minute recap of what you get, tell the story the best you can.
Okay.
And what we've done is, over the years, we always look forward to it, because once all the edits come in, kind of order pizza and beer, we kind of sit around here in the studio, and we watch all of the edits.
Oh, that's fun.
And we rank them, right? And then the idea is the top editors, the top picks, we want to bring them in and interview them and see if, number one, do they want a job, or do they just get into the contest to
show off?
To be a part of it. So once we know that, then obviously they have some chops, because we saw what they did with the 3-minute piece. And what's great about the contest is everybody's kind of on a level playing field.
Yeah.
Right? They're all getting the exact same footage. But what was really fascinating, and what's addicting every time we do one of these, just seeing how many different ways there are to tell somebody's story from the same raw footage.
Yeah.
And it just always blows me away. And that's how it went. And we've done 6 contests now, and we've always hired at least 1 or 2 editors out of, and even the contests in the past where, when we're looking for a new editor, we've gone back to people who did pretty well in previous contests.
Runner-ups.
Hired them.
Gotcha.
Craig is one of those stories where he didn't rank in the contest, but months went by and he was persistent. He stayed in touch, and he says, "Remember, I entered that contest?" And I said, "Come on in, let's have an interview." And he was wonderful, and he's been with us for a couple of years now. So he's an employee. So it's been the best tool I could think of to look for talent who now are literally working with your footage.
Right.
And now, especially now, they have the ability, the editors in these contests, the past several contests, have been sharp enough to go spend time on our site and really understand what we do and try to emulate that. Because obviously, if we see that, if I see that right out of the box, I'm interested in that person.
Sure.
Because I know they can do it. And that's how it's gone with finding talented editors, at least. I mean, shooters, you always know about shooters that are out there. They're either, doing something on their own. We have several guys who have come to us because they were doing it on their own, but they just got overwhelmed, couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
Maybe they're just not really set up to run a business that can get very busy if you're talented, and they'd rather just shoot.
Yeah.
So that's how we find some folks. What's really interesting, and my wife and I, the owners of the company, neither of us went to film school.
Yeah.
But for the most part, everybody who works for us went to film school. And it's not like we were only looking for film school students. But that's just how it turned out.
Sure. That's such a good idea. So, anyone who's watching this that is in need of editors, and I think the backlog, headache is a worry amongst probably 90% of the field. Big fan of that idea. So if is it possible to look on your past, would it be in your blog where those videos would be found if they can see the past contests?
Yeah.
So kind of check that out.
Sure. If you just Google CinemaCake editor contest, you'll see old blogs from many of the contests and the results. Not this last one, but the one before that. I think we had 21. We had a smaller contest just recently. Decided to pick up somebody quickly. We didn't have a big window.
Okay.
And the one before that, I think we had 21 entries.
Cool.
Here, 21 entries, and they're all posted in that blog.
Oh, awesome!
You can actually watch all 21 films, and the winner at the top, of course. And then she was from San Diego. We even have the video on there of when we Skyped her and told her that she was the winner.
Nice. So what I'll do is I'll include a link. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. We'll include a link to that blog post in the description of this video, so anyone watching can just kind of click that and see what you're talking about for reference. So you did mention company DNA just briefly earlier. How important is that to kind of, just permeate everybody from, not just editors, but people that are out in the field for you too? Because personally, I know one of my biggest, things I worry about is when my guys are out, they're under your name, they're representing you, your values, interacting with people, then you're not really there to kind of monitor. You just there's a big trust factor there. So you talk a little bit about how, you kind of prep them for that and what your thought process is behind getting them ready to kind of send them out and leave the nest.
That is a great question because it's a complicated one. The best advice I could give, I think, is to have folks shadow with you. Because if they can go on a job, so if we have a 3-person crew out and I have somebody interested in working for us, I will recommend that they come along, just shadow, right? And usually on a shadow, I encourage them to
pick up the camera.
Take the camera.
Yeah.
Right? Let's go see what's going on with audio. Let's talk about that. So that hands-on experience, and then also with shadowing, you get a really good feel for how they act around other people.
Sure.
Because just because somebody's talented doesn't mean they should be around the public.
Yeah. Right.
So, it's finding who works with your clientele, and let's face it, we have some pretty high-end clientele. And I am very particular about how they interact with our guests, and let's remember we're on stage all the time, so it's not just the guests, it's not just the bride and the groom. Sometimes in a church, for example, we and the photographers are the only ones standing up and moving around. Right. So just by definition, we're on stage. People are looking at us. We're the only person moving in the room, so that we're gonna attract their eyes. So how you present yourself, even how you walk, how you carry the camera, whether you block people, whether you bang into people, it's just that situational awareness. Yeah. Has to be number one. And a lot of guys, especially video guys who have never been out, they're lost in that area. Yeah. They just need a little like finishing school. Right. Right. From how they dress and how they act, and how to talk to people. Most people are great though, but I think that shadow, when you have somebody out on a job and they see the kind of venues they're in, they see the kind of clientele we work with, and they know how to be sensitive. Because it's easy to get in trouble, especially at a wedding when people are drinking. Right. I remember in the old days. Perception is reality. Even down to what you carry in your hand away from the bar. Right. If they're serving champagne and apple cider, you better not be picking up an apple cider, because it could be mistaken for champagne. Sure. Now, walk away with a glass of water, a Diet Coke with a straw in it. Yeah. All those little things, because now we're also in a business where we're working with. I've seen bands who they just drink. Right? They're inappropriate behavior. We don't want to be lumped in with that crowd. We want to stand out. We not stand out, but we want to blend. Sure. We want to disappear. Yeah, and it's not just about the client's guests and the client experience for that one wedding, because it goes on to the interactions with the other vendors too. Like if a DJ's maybe giving your guy a hard time about an audio feed, and how they interact with them, like that experience could carry on, and maybe it would mean not a referral from that guy, or not a referral from the planner, or if it has multiple streams of outcomes that could be affected essentially. So it's always something to keep in mind. It's not just about the client too, it's about the vendor interaction. Right. You're one tweet away from being in trouble. Yeah. No matter who you offend. Yeah. So, right, it's important. I mean, down to, I know a lot of people think it's silly, and you'll see on the boards lots of posts about eating, right, or being fed. Yeah. But I think it's important that we're not seen as enjoying the food of the guests, for example. We shouldn't be taking food from the cocktail hour. Yeah. Everybody has to eat and drink, but do that away from the crowd. They just shouldn't see you eat and drink. It's
Sure.
little things like that that I think keep us out of trouble. And and most importantly, when people see us on stage, that we look professional. We look like we're there with a purpose. We have a job to do. We're
Yeah.
not sitting over in the corner of the dance floor texting on our phones,
Yeah.
right?
And
So
that's what it's about, is the professionalism. Exactly.
right, right, and it's the same with the vendors too. You know, we work with some wonderful vendors, and that's where a lot of our business comes from. And if they see you acting professionally, even in the back where everybody's eating,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's how they see you operate and how your team operates.
Totally.
And just going back to your original question, I think that shadowing is the best tool we've found to make sure people understand how we act around our guests, how we treat them, how we talk to them, and it's a wonderful way to train newer folks on the job. And I've had people come from either running their own businesses that they're
Yeah.
not doing it anymore, or from another company, and everybody has their own DNA, right?
Mhm.
So you just want to make sure you're in alignment with that.
It's also, good because someone may be a certain way in an interview or in a relaxed setting, like in your office, and then when they're thrown into the battlefield, they may, you could flip a switch, or they may not just handle those stresses, because a wedding is one of the most stressful things you can shoot, because once that moment's gone, it's gone. And so just that thought in the back of their mind could just set them off, or they just might be able to handle themselves. So yeah, that's a good idea, the shadowing.
Yeah, I take a lot from other professionals in our industry, especially on the social side, weddings. And I admire planners who I know basically a shitstorm is happening,
Yeah.
but this planner is just cool as a
A
cucumber.
duck, yeah. They're kicking underneath, and they're totally
Just
cool on
manage-
top.
Yeah, just everybody's cool, everybody's calm, and they like nothing ever bothers them.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember I've seen planners, for example, knowing the politics of a family, like this mom should not be anywhere near this aunt, and I watched her go up and just kind of, she saw them getting too close together at the reception, micromanaging down to it was amazing.
Yeah.
They're like accidentally kind of approaching each other on the dance floor, and I watched her go across and say, "Hey, can I get you a drink?" and just kind of take her off and deflect. And it was, to me, that was like, wow. And she'll never mention that. That
Yeah.
would be a story. She won't say during the break, "Oh, you should see what I just had to do."
Yeah.
It just happens.
Yeah.
Just
It's a whole nother level.
It's like it just all magically happens. Nobody even knows what's going on. And that, to me, I mean, that's how I think we should be. People should be surprised on the back end and say, "Man, how did you do that? Like, we didn't even know that happened. I didn't even know you were there." We get
Yeah.
a lot of that. And it's just because of our demeanor, I think. Because you're right, we get stressed out. There's no reason to sprint down the aisle because you forgot to plug in a mic or something. Just be cool,
Yeah.
calm, walk around, do your thing, and it shows, because we're one of the we have to be there for everything, but we don't want to be seen. It's that tricky
Yeah.
balance that we're always we're on this seesaw and trying to make it work.
Gotcha. Yeah, really good advice. Do you have, let's do a fun question. Any horror stories,
Oh,
sans the names, of course, that you could share with team-related issues? Any regrets, anything that sticks out in your mind about a past bad experience? Something that you'll never do again?
I mean, there have been a lot that we've learned from,
Sure.
and a lot of it, I think a lot of it is, like, for example, we had a big bar mitzvah,
Mm-hmm.
and the venue was decorated with these. You had to walk into the main room and down a hallway into the ballroom through this wall of beads. Like, you had
Yeah.
to go like that, right?
Yeah.
Go through. It looked beautiful, but practically, like, we saw people getting their hair caught in it and just having all kinds of trouble. And later on in the evening, I'm in the ballroom, and one of the folks from the venue comes to me and says, "I think one of your guys just pulled down that whole display and broke one of our tables." And, right. So I walked out there, and it was just a mess.
God.
And this thing had come down, it smashed it, ended up doing like $1,500 worth of damage.
Yeesh.
But I knew the planner.
Uh-huh.
I worked very quickly with them to help fix it. It ended up costing $1,500 in damages.
Yuck.
I didn't even claim it. I just paid it.
Yeah.
And to this day, that venue will never forget that. And
Really?
they'll send it. And it could have been a mess.
Hmm.
You know, I could have blamed them for the way it was set up. You know what I mean? I could have been defensive, but we just fixed it. And another time, and actually it was the same planner. It's funny, but it's probably one of the planners who refers us the most.
Yeah.
It was 10 minutes before doors, 10 minutes before people came in from the cocktail and to sit down. And I was with my glide cam. I forget what I was doing, but I knocked into one of these big vases full of water on the sweetheart table, and the whole damn thing came down. The glass smashed, water went everywhere. It just wiped out the sweetheart table. And to watch this venue go to action, and the planners, and of course our team jumped in.
Yeah.
Nobody said a word. We just started cleaning. The tablecloth got rushed down to the basement where it was put in a dryer.
Yeah.
And
wow.
I think doors only were delayed maybe 4 or 5 minutes.
Wow.
It's all put back together beautiful. And to this day, it's, you know, I always tell this planner, I promise I won't break anything.
Yeah.
He always teases me, yeah, you're probably going to break something.
We've been...
I think it's how you respond. No matter what happens, no matter what the adversity is,
keep your cool.
It's how you handle it.
Yeah. We have been fortunate we haven't had that happen yet. One jumps to mind though. Another, I think it wasn't really anyone's fault. You know, we had a wedding on the rooftop of the Mandarin downtown here in Boston, and it gets pretty gusty like in Back Bay. So they had a chuppah set up that was really nice. They spent maybe 5 hours like setting this thing up, and the wind just dominated it, and it came crashing like 10 minutes before the ceremony started with like the guests already in their seat. And the flower girls and they just flocked over and got this thing. They had to help, have the parents kind of help situate it during it, but no one really told the bride until like after. They're like, oh, by the way, this fell over. But yeah, keeping her cool. She didn't know until after the fact. I certainly wasn't going to tell her.
Yeah. So yeah, you asked what problems we've learned from, I guess. I guess the most important thing on a live event like that is that your client, most importantly, should never really know what's going on. They should be. We all hear about videographers getting in the way of photographers or the band not doing something right, or the lighting not being right. And should I go to the bride? Should I complain? I'm like, come on.
Yeah, no. Be above that.
Make it work and laugh about it later. But this should just be transparent to your client, and because that's all you have is that experience.
Totally. So just 2 last questions. Biggest stress factor, maybe you've mentioned it, maybe not, when it comes to managing a team, whether it's the communication part of it, finding someone in a pinch. What's the hardest part, for you? What turns your hair gray with managing, such a large team?
Well, at least
not that you have any gray hair, actually. I don't see any.
I have a couple. Luckily, I have a great team to manage all those stressors, and especially Taylor and my wife Cheryl. Taylor is our production manager, and she's usually the first person to pick up the phone, and Cheryl does a lot of behind the scenes, just kind of running the whole thing. So a lot of what would normally stress me out is gone, because when you have a team around you. But the really big problems sometimes I have to get involved in.
Yeah.
I think what stresses me out the most is sometimes I get frustrated when clients don't understand how difficult what we're doing can be.
Yeah.
And you almost get the feeling like that they think we're really just showing up, pointing a camera, going back and spending a few hours editing.
Right.
They don't know what's involved in the most important part, which is pre-production.
Yeah.
Right. Until you expose them to that, and unfortunately, the clients we don't have contact with are the ones that we usually have. It makes sense. We have problems with.
Yeah.
Not communicating. We're not on the same wave. Even very wealthy clients who have no problem dropping a lot of coin, but there's no communication. We almost feel like we were a check on the, we checked off our videographer. Right?
Yeah.
That's all we need to do. See you at the wedding.
Yeah.
Well, then
what happens is you lack setting the expectations with everything.
What are the expectations, right? on the back end, did they expect a 2-hour wedding film?
Yep.
Right? So that can be problematic. And not that we won't make one if somebody really wants one, but I usually talk people out of that. And I think that communication we've learned over the years is we have to, even with planners, there are a few planners who like to insulate all their vendors from the client.
Yeah.
Right? They want to be the go-to person. Everything flows through the planner.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's great for linens and for lighting and for drapes.
Yep.
Maybe even for, some entertainment. But for what we do and photographers do, and even some caterers, when they're specializing in something, you really have to be on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
And when somebody steps in the way of that and doesn't allow us to have that back and forth, there can be problems on the back end. So
yeah.
I would say that's a good lesson that we've learned is, by all means, try to be in touch. And if you're not, just at least do your best to explain what's going on so the planner and the
can relay.
Understand. Because now on the back end, maybe you should be charging more for that. Because if you don't deal with these things up front, they're going to cost twice as much on the back end.
Yeah.
If we deliver a client a 30-minute film that we've had no interaction with, and they come back with a list, and they didn't care about it in the beginning.
Yeah.
But now they care.
Right.
So now we're dealing with something on the post side. So maybe charge more for a client. I don't know. We don't do that, but it's one of those things I always think about. It's like, God, it would be so much easier.
Yeah.
Just have a mind meld with our client. More so, I think, than even photography, right? Because we're telling stories. We have the audio is involved, and we're dealing with personalities, and just when we're getting our voiceovers. So to know who's who, and to know what they're expecting, and to know what they like, and that's the advantage we have now too, because we have hundreds of films in our gallery. So when a client calls, I always joke, because when Cheryl or Taylor pick up the phone, and I always hear that question, "Oh, great, have you been to our site? Have you seen our work?"
Yeah.
A lot of brides are almost embarrassed to say, "Well, I've been on your website for the last hour and a half, and I think I've watched 30." Right? So that's always a good sign.
Yes.
When we hear that, we know we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Right? What they get is going to be exactly what they expect. So a very long answer to that question is, the frustrating part is when you don't have communication with your end client. It just makes it so much more difficult.
Yeah, I totally agree. The expectations is huge. One thing, what happens with me is it's not so much the planners that act as a wall. Although you get that occasionally. For me, it's more, I get a worry when it's like the parents doing the research, or it's someone else doing the research and reaching out and contacting vendors. What I'll try to do almost immediately is to word this as nicely as possible. Is that, if it's a parent, a father especially, you kind of got to be careful, is to word it such that we totally appreciate, that a lot of the times you foot the bill and, you're paying for this sort of stuff, but we have to view your daughter as our client, because otherwise we're not going to be able to produce the caliber of work that you see on the website, because so much comes down to communication. And so that's kind of trying what we do. We try and get to that as soon as possible, without being disrespectful, of course.
Or at least make sure that dad has told his daughter that he's a videographer.
Yeah, right. It's like, hi, who are you?
Right. I mean, we all know it's so much nicer to walk into a bridal suite
with a hug.
And, hey, Dave! Right? As opposed to, who's that weirdo that just, right? Because it takes
thing on top there?
Up, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that's the biggest tip I can give, is make sure you have that communication and understanding.
Gotcha. So last question. Today virtual world is kind of all encompassing in most businesses. I know our editor is, she's not here 7 days a week. She comes in occasionally to our studio to edit, but most of the time it's kind of a remote situation. So are you involved in that either now or in the past, having to manage remote teams? And then also, if you could trickle into talking a little about any sort of tools or software that you use or implement that sort of helps the collaboration and communication part of managing that.
Yeah, we can handle up to as many as 4 events. I don't like to do that, but usually our max is 3 crews
per weekend or
per day.
Per day, okay.
Per day, yeah. We actually have 4 tomorrow.
Okay.
But every team has, I hate to call them the team leader or the producer. We've started
Alpha.
using producer because they're ultimately they're the one responsible for making sure, everything happens.
Yeah.
They're the contact with everybody there.
Mm-hmm.
They're responsible for making sure the media makes it back.
Yeah.
It's dealt with properly. So as long as you have a good producer on the job, and you know that the other folks there have at least been vetted and they've been through and they've been shadowing and hopefully producing for you plenty of times before with not a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm.
That's where our confidence comes from. I don't stress about multiple teams. Matter of fact, I look forward to that text at the end of the night. How'd everybody do? I send a group text.
Yeah.
Back, oh, we had a great time.
Sweet.
So the tools we use 2 tools right now online. They're both cloud-based. One's called ShootQ, and that's where we do all of our sales, all of our contact before the event.
Yeah.
That's where the contracts are, all the emails are there, everything we promise, everything we do, right? And then after the event, we have another program we use called Basecamp. Basecamp is a project management, and because our editors now are dealing with sometimes 2 or 3 other people on a job that they either have to get assets from, or who maybe can give some insight into what happened that day or that couple. So Basecamp is where all of that stuff goes. So for example, we'll make 2 phone calls with clients. We'll call each client shortly before the wedding, obviously after booking them. Before the wedding, we'll have a pre-shoot call, and then whoever's going to be the producer on that job will have that conversation with the client. Usually a week or 2 before, when we know the timeline's in place, all the vendors are in place. So, and then we have another phone call before the edit begins. And on that phone call sits the editor and maybe one of us. And then the idea there is to, yes, we know what you planned, but now that the day's over, looking back on the day, what are some of the things that really are important to you? And most importantly, what are the things that you don't want us to happen? That we don't want to, we invited Aunt Millie. We didn't know she was going to get that drunk. And I know she's probably in the video. Can you just leave her out, or at least put her in the outtakes? So those kind of conversations happen even before the edit begins. And we found having those 2 phone calls before the shoot and then before the edit, it just saves a lot of aggravation.
Yeah, it's interesting that you broach the subject or, avoid the problem later, because one thing sticks out in my mind. In the past, we had a client whose father, who was divorced, was remarried, and then that wife was at the wedding, whom he then later divorced, which she then asked us to go back and remove all instances of her, one of them being like part of the toast. So it's smart to kind of realize those, possible problematic situations before it's going to take you longer to deal with.
Yeah, that's actually one of the questions in our questionnaire. It says, are there any politics that we should be aware of? Divorces, people who passed away? Because, as you know, we get voiceovers at our weddings to help tell the story. And those voiceover people are selected by our clients, but we don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want my audio guy asking an embarrassing question about grandma who's already passed away. We just want to know. So that's one of the questions. And once we have all that information, that's online. Shooters, editors, all have access to it, and they know the day of the shoot, and they know for the edit everything that's been discussed, all the hopes and dreams of this client and what they expect to see in their film. And then hopefully that makes it on the back end, when they first get what we call the pop your popcorn letter. When they get that film the first time, they're just absolutely in love. There's no changes, and we move on. So,
which is a good feeling.
It's a great feeling. I don't think of all the things we've had to go back and re-edit or fix. Not a lot of ridiculous requests, but none of us like to see that. Especially the editor. They've lived with this job 30, 40, 50 hours.
Sure.
They're so invested in it, and to have anybody criticize what they did, I know can be.
It's hard not to take it personal.
It still hurts.
Totally.
Know. So it's minimizing that and making sure that fair expectations are there. The editor really understands what's important, what's not, and just by having that little phone call before the edit begins has really helped a lot. And most importantly, I think it lets the client know that we're listening.
Yeah,
Right?
totally.
When they see that film, they're like, "Oh yeah, look at that."
Yep.
He asked me if I wanted to have my mom's brooch, and he put that as one of the shots. It just, I can only imagine it makes it better.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been awesome. Super helpful, super informative. I think just to touch on some of the highlights, it was having team members shadow you. Some of the tools were, Basecamp and ShootQ, which I actually picked up because of you guys. You were the first videographer I saw using ShootQ, and I was blown away by it. So we have it totally integrated without everything that we use. I'll have links to those. Dave, thanks again. It's been such an awesome time talking with you. I hope everyone can take away at least a few of those important factors.
Thank you, Christian. That was fun.
Awesome. Thanks again, and we appreciate it. Hope to talk to you soon. Thanks, man.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye bye.